Reach Locked On Heat on Twitter, Instagram, email us, lockedonheat@gmail.com. Let's update the Heat culture bracket in which the person who represents Heat culture the most moves on. Last week, Pat Riley and Goran Dragic advanced easily. Andy Ellisberg upset LeBron, and Shaq got the upset over Chris Bosh. Surprising one there. Let's see.
All you.
That was all me. Let's see what we have today. Our first matchup: 5 seed Dwyane Wade versus 28 seed Sherman Douglas. We all know D Wade here, David, but why don't you speak to Sherman Douglas's case?
Known as the Little General, not a very long stint with the Heat General, one of the earlier picks there. Kind of known as being a little burly, a little gruff. Didn't shy away from the physicality. He was a different kind of point guard back then. Again, more of the floor general, but a little bit more physical. Just a guy who helped define a team that really lacked any sort of identity at the time. And he was traded to the Boston Celtics, wound up killing Miami a couple times during those 80s matchups there. Again, that was a long time ago. Early 90s matchups too. It was a good player during a time that I think a lot of younger Heat fans certainly don't even know existed. But he had a little swag to him too, and he was culture-y at a time when there wasn't any real culture. No offense to Ron Rothstein or Kevin Lockery or any of those early coaches for the Heat, but he was certainly he didn't play for Pat Riley. He was never here when Riley really helped develop the culture for the first time. So this is an easy landslide victory for Dwayne.
Yeah, it's D Wade. But just it was nice to revisit the Sherman Douglas thing. D Wade being a 5 seed, do you have any issue with that?
Well, it depends. I can't remember exactly how the other top 4 seeds shake out. Look, we're seeing some upsets in the tournament. I don't see any reason why Dwayne couldn't climb his way.
We've got Pat, UD, Spo, and Alonzo, I think, in some order, are the top 4 seeds, if I'm remembering off the top of my head here. So I think Dwyane Wade, if he never left for Chicago and had that half year in Cleveland, easily a top 4 seed. But he did.
Can't do that because Alonzo left also. He left as a free agent, so I guess can't use that argument. Yeah, it's a very different.
But he's now an owner for the Jazz while Alonzo's still with the Heat.
Because he doesn't have any other option.
Sorry, D Wade. You get bumped to the 5 seed. I'm gonna have a hard time not voting for D Wade, but you're right. He advances. All right. Our next matchup: 21 seed Caron Butler versus 12 seed Anthony Carter. So a couple of current assistant coaches, and pretty good Heat role players in their day facing off here together.
This is a tough one, a very tough one. I like the Caron pick. He was only here for a couple of years, but considering his past,
tough juice.
Everything everybody considers about UD and his upbringing. If you need to get a refresher course on Caron's early adolescence, very, very difficult life. He was as tough as it gets. I love just the memory of him crying as he was eventually selected 10th in that draft. He slipped a little bit after coming out from UConn and just getting drafted by the Miami Heat and loving this organization so much at a point in time when they were, again, lacking a little bit of identity. Alonzo going through his kidney issues.
The year before D Wade got drafted.
Yeah, the season before. He was only here for 2 years. He was there that year before Dwayne, the year after Dwayne. Yeah, and then he was included in that trade for Shaq in 2004. So always been a part of Heat culture, always loved speaking about Heat culture. It helped define him as a player who wound up having really good careers, in Washington, Dallas, etc.
I remember talking with him. He spent, I think it was just the 1 season in Sacramento. And this was the first Kings game I ever covered over at the old Sleep Train Arena. And I got to talk, and Caron was just like riding the bench at that point in his career. And
the vet on the end of the end of the roster.
And the Heat were in town. And so I was living in Northern California at the time, and I made the hour trip north to go cover that Heat Kings game. And I remember talking to guys like D Wade and UD about Caron Butler as a teammate. And the whole story was just about Caron Butler being a great teammate and how much of a veteran presence he was helpful for with that young Kings team. Turns out he was not helpful at all because the Kings still didn't make the playoffs. But that was
overcome Vlade Divac, man. There's only so much you can do.
But the way people talked about Caron, he is oozing Heat culture. It's not a surprise that he made his way back to the organization soon after retiring, and he's now on that bench. Ditto for Anthony Carter, man. Like, we don't hear stories about Anthony Carter, but people love him. People love
undrafted him. Guy. Like, he is part of Heat culture, like in the way that a lot of people perceive it now. An undrafted guy who worked his way up there, was a playoff starter in a lot of those Knicks battles. Good backup point guard to Tim Hardaway too. Like, he was a tough defender. always made the right play. And perhaps his biggest assist ever was his agent not signing his extension in time in 2004. Oh, sorry, in 2003, which allowed them to sign Lamar Odom with the suddenly freed up cap space. So I'm sure AC doesn't like talking about that because it cost him several millions and millions of dollars. But he helped Miami get Lamar Odom in 2003, and then eventually Lamar was able to help acquire Shaquille O'Neal in 2004. So
spoiler
AC,
alert: Lamar Odom not part of the Heat culture bracket, didn't make the top 32.
Unfortunately.
But so according to Twitter, our Twitter polls had Dwyane Wade winning by a landslide. 96% of people voted for Dwyane Wade. 4% voted for Sherman Douglas. I guess those are Twitter trolls. We had 87% of people voting for Caron Butler over Anthony Carter.
Ooh.
Do you have Caron? Do you have Caron advancing here? Not sure why he's a 21 seed and Anthony Carter's a 12 seed. Not sure how that works.
I don't know. Again, man, that's a tough one.
Should we let the listeners break the tie then? Just go with Caron?
No, I have to go with Caron. Yeah, I think he feels the Heat culture more.
Yep.
You know.
All right. Next matchup: 13 seed Shane Battier versus 20 seed Brian Grant. So we have Brian Grant, early 2000s Miami Heat, Shane Battier, early the Big Three era.
Right, 2 years or 3 years there from 2011 to 2014. 3 seasons, 2 championships, 3 trips to the finals. Stayed on as a front office exec for a long time. And the thing that kind of I'm skewing towards Brian Grant personally.
I thought you would.
I just think that Shane was Shane wherever he went, and he was a big part of the Houston organization. He's a big part of Duke. He's a big part of Detroit basketball and just the city's identity because he's from that area. Like he is an entity unto himself. As much as he fit into Heat culture, I don't think he helped define it. Whereas Brian Grant was just this great worker who was not supposed to play the role that he did when he was acquired. He was supposed to play alongside Alonzo Mourning. He wound up replacing Alonzo Mourning, who of course could not play because of the kidney issue, playing undersized. Never forget the quote from Yao Ming, who's saying after being guarded in a win over the heavily favored Houston Rockets, that Brian Grant clawed his back up like a tiger, just again feisty, outplaying like bigger players, just doing everything he could to help promote Heat culture. They weren't winning a lot of games during that span, so it's hard to kind of overlook what Brian.
Well, they went to the playoffs while he was playing center that first year with Dwyane Wade.
Yeah, they sure did. So yeah, I mean,
he was a big part of that. Was a top 5, probably even more than that, Heat team for me of all time.
Top three.
That might be top 3. Yeah. I was ready to go with Shane Battier. 82% of the audience is going with Shane Battier. My argument for Shane Battier was that he kind of was doing the little things on those big 3 teams that those Heat teams needed, and also Battioki. Those were my 2 arguments.
Didn't consider the Battioki.
But you kind of sold me on Brian Grant.
Nice.
If you want to go Brian Grant, I'll go Brian Grant, and we'll go against.
I'm going Brian Grant.
All right, Brian Grant advances. Good job. 20 seed Brian Grant over 13 seed Shane Battier. All right, final matchup of the day: 29 seed Glen Rice versus 4 seed Erik Spoelstra.
I've got one jersey in my closet. It's a Glen Rice. I think I was pissed off at Pat Riley. Still I am, after having traded Glenn G Money Rice in '95 to acquire Alonzo Mourning. I always I think I've recalled on the show a couple of times a drunken adventure in Coconut Grove one night long ago, and seeing Glen Rice walking with his former wife Christina and accusing him, or just coming up to him and say, "You got to join the Heat. You got to join the Heat." And he's like, "Yeah, we're working on it," and bummed out that it never happened. So I always thought that there was a reunion there. Now he's part of the front office. He's always going to be defined by Heat culture, I think. And yet, come on. Spoisms, like you don't get Heat culture without Erik Spoelstra.
It's a tough break in the bracket for Glen Rice, who looks like Wesley Snipes and Blade in this photo, by the way.
High top fade, you can't go against it.
Spo moves on easily. 97% of the audience went with Spo over Glen
Burn
Rice. Nothing against Glen Rice, but it's Erik Spoelstra. It's tough to debate him and take him down.